They were told that their ancestor told them that beings from Sirius B came to, they called them the Nommo. They were walking beings like dolphins. The ship landed, a lake appeared before the ship. They jumped out of the ship, swam through the lake, and then walked up to the ancestors and began to tell them the story of Sirius. I look up, and it's a scene out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Colored lights swirling. I was just waiting for a craft to land.
Today I'm really excited because we have Patricia Cori with us.
Hi, Neil. I didn't know you were in Peru. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking about things that I haven't necessarily already talked about, but I will give an intro so that people that don't know my work have a little bit more of an idea of how I got here. Since 1996, I've been ascribed to the Sirian High Council well before that. And as a child, I was really having some extraordinary experiences. But it was 1996 when I went into the crop circle in England that I had the out-of-body experience to receive for the without any question contact with the Sirian High Council. As a child, and many of you have heard this story, I used to sit in the woods we lived in the country up on the mountains, and we had woods in our land. And I would wait and they would come, these people. I depicted them here in a painting. I called them the little blue people. And my first memories of my galactic connection were so young. I don't remember at 4 years old when I told my mother I was from another universe. She said I walked into the kitchen. I had been sitting out in the garden, and I had a fort. I always had a fort, and I used to see all kinds of beings coming around me, and they were like little fairy beings. They were blue, like these beings depicted here. And they talked to me about Sirius, about parallel unit. Bear in mind, I'm talking 1957. We barely had television then, right? So it is completely particular that I was using this language that far back. And I told her that I was from a parallel universe. And she wasn't ready to know that just yet, but I would get back to her on it. And I walked back out, leaving my mother quite bewildered. And over the years, I've had the most extraordinary experiences. The first encounter was the little blues. This lasted a very long time. They were manifesting physical. They were very physical. They were not ghostly at all, these little beings. I could see them fluttering the wings, and sometimes I could feel the wind or the breeze coming off of their wings. And I know that was because they were showing me we can manifest physicality, feel our presence. And so I would tell my mother they're like butterflies. And fortunately, I had a really, really extraordinary mother, and she supported this experience in me, even though she said, I don't understand what you're going through, but I will always support your experience. All of my life, I've used a picture here that is someone's depiction of the Sirians, only because I have three primary Sirian voices that I hear. But in fact, the Sirian High Council is a collective of consciousness that has no form, only light. And so they've also often said to me, you need to see form. We can create form for you. Remember the butterflies. And we can bleed through from the sixth down to the third dimension if you need to understand us that way, which a lot of people do understand that way. And so in my years of representing the Sirians, I've heard it all. People have said, I see this, depictions of aliens with blue skin. These are the Sirians. And all I have to say about that, and ships, you name it. Everyone has their experience. And my position is that everyone's experience is right for them. Mine is that the Sirian High Council is a collective consciousness that vibrates at the sixth dimensional density. It includes ascended extraterrestrials. And I'm going to be talking about the multidimensional star system of that is Sirius. So ascended extraterrestrials from Sirius A and B. A is still in the third dimension, B has ascended. Pleiadians, believe it or not, ascended Pleiadians because the vast field of Pleiadian energy, some of it is a little dicey, some of it is higher consciousness. And so it is those higher consciousness Pleiadians that sit with this frequency, and also Arcturians. There are also ascended masters from the Earth and other 3D planets. You know, we tend to poo-poo Earth's position in the hierarchy of spirituality, but great beings have walked this planet, and great beings still do. And, you know, while I don't want to use, well, let me use the word bemoan, but not in such a negative sense. While we contemplate the plight of the Earth right now, I always like to remind people that, and so it was in the video spoken, we came here to be this, to do this. We know at the soul level why we chose this. Sometimes I'm a little befuddled about it, but many of us are bodhisattvas who have come to serve, and many of us are getting our doctorate in spirituality, and planet Earth is the place to do it. The Kioqui, who I've written about in Before We Leave You, the book of The Message from the Whales and Dolphins. And so the Kioqui are ascended whale and dolphin beings, angelic beings, planetary celestial guardians, and spirit representatives for all the elementals. This is a very rich community of consciousness, of collective consciousness, that I'm blessed to be connected to. And I think many of you are as well, and that's probably one of the reasons why you've tuned in. So I mentioned that the Sirian star system is a multidimensional trinity of stars. This is complicated for a lot of people to understand. Robert Temple wrote the book, The Sirius Mystery, much time ago, decades ago. And he reported that the Dogon tribe of Mali, the ancient, I'm stammering. When a group of archaeologists and astrophysicists went to visit the Dogon, they had heard that they had star maps back, I think, as far as 1967. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. They were told that their ancestor told them that beings from Sirius B came they called them the Nommo. They were walking beings like dolphins. The ship landed, a lake appeared before the ship. They jumped out of the ship, swam through the lake, and then walked up to the ancestors and began to tell them the story of Sirius. They said that Sirius A was still in 3D, and that Sirius B had become a shell of a star, and there was another star, Sirius C, and the astronomers that were dealing with them at the time soon discovered that there was a wobble in Sirius A, that beautiful blue star we love so much, and that wobble was being caused by another star interacting with it, orbiting it, and pulling its vibrational field to create that wobble. So the ancient Dogons, centuries earlier, already knew about that phenomenon. So you have Sirius A in 3D, the star we love and see at night. Sirius B ascended into the 6th dimension, and Sirius C is in the 4th dimension, which is part of the reason we're having some difficulty. I'm going to leave this alone. Sirius C, the Anunnaki, Planet X, the whole bit, is because when Sirius C ascended, one of the planets, Nibiru, did not make it into the higher dimensions, and it got stuck I think if you've read my books, you know what I'm talking about. It got stuck between Sirius A and Earth, or shall I say, sorry, our sun. And so Planet X is Nibiru, which is doing this rotation between Sirius A and our sun. And it's part of the problem that we have with the Anunnaki and the whole story. But it's too much for me to go into that now. You've read my books, you know what I'm talking about. Syrian involvement in human and earth evolution, it's so important. Why are we connected? More and more people are feeling this connection. What is the connection? How is it that the Syrians are so involved with earth? And the answer has been spelled out by many people, but I think that one of the first sources of this information was my early book, The Cosmos of Soul, which I channeled in 1996-7 and came out in 1998, I believe. And it explained the Sirian experiment and how beings from Sirius saw the Earth as a nesting place of very pure, we're talking millions of years ago, of course, a very pure environment to birth a new species, a highly evolved species that would go on to serve as Christed beings, not only on this planet, but to bring light into this region of our solar system and the universe. Earth was deemed the perfect habitat in which to birth the golden race, Homo sapiens. And as I wrote, and as I quoted from the book, it was a match made in heaven, or the heavens. And so came the concept of the 12-stranded blueprint of DNA. I'd like to interrupt here by saying that as a kid, in this strangeness of being a galactic child in a non-galactic world, my mom said I used to make all these. You couldn't even find a picture of DNA back then. I hate to date myself, but my mom said I used to create with toothpicks and clay. I used to try to recreate this complex 12-stranded DNA, which was impossible with the tools that I had, because it's pretty impossible to even depict it now, to create the sacred geometry that would be needed to depict a dodecahedral DNA multi-stranded structure is still, I've never seen it depicted, even with the highest forms of graphic arts. And I won't even mention AI because that doesn't enter my brain. But anyway, as a child, I kept making these models. And my mom would ask me, "Honey, what is this?" And I'd look at her like, "Why don't you know? It's the 12-stranded blueprint." So as a child, I was already obsessed with this wonderful design of our DNA that was a collection of the highest DNA material, genetic material, from selected, very evolved alien, let's call them alien beings, and even multi-dimensional imprinting. So I want, I'm seeing people come out with information now. Someone even wrote a book called The Dodecahedral DNA, which I was like, wow, I'm glad you read my book. So this theme of the DNA is so important. It's so important to what is being done to us now. And by the way, I'm going to be going back and forth between the problem and the light, the problem and the solution, because that's how I roll. And because I think we need to talk about all aspects of what we're going through right now. So over the years, this is something I've never really shared with anyone. I have been encountering all kinds of beings. They're not ghostly. They're so physical that a lot of times I can't tell the difference. And in my work as a healer and as clairvoyant, I always see spirits. It's different. I'm talking about beings just walking into the room, walking in through the wall. And fortunately, because I am very meticulous about protection energy and golden white light energy and angelic presence, never have I felt that there was lower entity consciousness coming through. So I get these messengers. It was once in the university, I was sitting in the student union. I wasn't that spiritual then. We're talking about early 70s. And this being, this woman appeared a few tables away. She was violet and the deep magenta tones. She was wearing goddess gowns, and we were a bunch of hippies. I mean, it was college days, right? She walked over to me and she said, "Oh my, you're about to have an incredible breakthrough, aren't you?" I said, "I'm sorry?" She goes, "Your energy." She said, she said, "I want to tell you, I can understand that it's going to be difficult for you to adapt to acclimatize to what you're going to be going through. So just know that we're here." I was like, "Okay." And she walked out the other door. And I jumped up from the table because I wanted to ask her questions, and she wasn't there. She wasn't there. And some of my friends, I asked them if they'd seen her, and they looked at me like, "What kind of drugs are you on, Patricia?" So I was getting these messengers constantly all my life, and learning to cope with it with a sense of, this is my mission. So embrace it and understand that you will be considered a quack, a conspiracy theorist, a nut job, crazy, all of these things. If you talk about it anyway, because obviously you're meant to do that. So after all of these encounters, I've had craft over the house. I once in Rome, I was sitting at my, sorry, if those, I see many of you are people that have read my books, so forgive me if I repeat anything, but I want to get everybody on the same page. Once I was sitting in my desk. Unfortunately, I don't have a scientific mind, so I didn't write down the dates of these occurrences, which I regret. I was sitting at my desk in my office at home, and the light went, vroom, vroom. The computer started crackling, and the light went up to a voltage that was not possible without blowing up, and then whoom, went down, and then whoom, went back up. And I had the foresight to yank the plug out of the wall for the computer, and my dog was just, her hair was standing straight out. I grabbed her. I thought, this house, something's going to blow. And I ran out to the edge of my land, which was a very, very long driveway. And I looked back at the house, and the entire house was just going, vroom, lights, crash. It was a scene out of a movie. And I thought, oh my God, because I had just bought the house. And my first thought was very physical. Oh my God, my house is going to blow up. How do I protect my house? And then I realized, oh my God, this is contact. And at that moment, the woman next door, this was Rome country folk, okay, simple, good farmer type folk, okay, it wasn't Rome center. This woman goes, "Patricia." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Look up." And I hadn't been looking up because I was so focused on what was going on at the house. I look up, and it's a scene out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm talking colored lights swirling. I was just waiting for a craft to land. And I remember thinking, if a craft materializes and a ladder comes down, how do I let my boyfriend know that that where I went? These were the thoughts that were going through my head, holding my dog in my arms. Will they let me bring my baby? And the neighbor said, I was always very careful, by the way, of talking about spiritual things or UFOs with the neighbors, because my boyfriend, the Italian, said, just don't share this stuff with the locals because they'll string you up. So I didn't say anything. She said, look up. And when I did, I saw all these lights and movement and swirling. It was amazing. It was right out of Close Encounters. And she said, is it a UFO? And I didn't know how to answer. I said, don't know. The next day I found out that the people on the other side of my land, at this time, their television blew up. And the man that was sitting in front of the television had to be taken to the hospital because there were pieces of glass in his skin. So I realized this was some kind of extraordinary contact, and it was time for me to gear it up. No more chance encounter, no more relegating it to spirit contact. Now it was like, you're being called. Get with the program. So in 1996, a series of events led me to England. You know how that is. A series of events lead you a step forward on your path, right? And 1996 was the year of my complete evolution. I went to England. Okay, the series of events are that I was taking a color therapy course in the England countryside. And I had a dream that I was flying over Stonehenge. And you know how those dreams are where you know you're not dreaming? I was flying over Stonehenge and I heard a voice say, oh, and as I looked down, I saw this exact image next to Stonehenge. And a voice said, this is a lock-on point for interdimensional contact. Pay attention. And I was still in this between consciousness and sleep state. This is going to be important for you. So very important. Wake up now, Trigia. Wake up, Starseed. We have work to do. I woke up 4 o'clock, which is for years the wake up call time when I channel. And I scribbled down what I saw and what I heard. I was in a dorm with some other women, so I kind of tried to keep it quiet, but it was weird, very weird. And in the morning at breakfast, I shared the image with them. And somebody said, wow, that looks like, no, I'm wrong. People were like, wonder what it could be. That's right. And we went to Glastonbury that weekend for the weekend. We had the weekend free. So we went to Glastonbury for a field trip because the course was really intense. Very intense. It was a college. And I see this image on the wall, on a poster in a bookstore, the exact same thing I scribbled. Stonehenge and this breathtaking crop circle, 151 circles in the Fibonacci sequence, which came down in full daylight within 45 minutes. And this has been testimony proven by a crop flyer, a small plane who flew over and 45 minutes, the field, and 45 minutes later when he came back, this was in the field. So if you want to tell me that humans made this perfect geometric structure in full light of day, in one of the fields that was the most trafficked in England, because in the summer everybody uses that, the Stonehenge area is packed with tourist travel, and it's also a thoroughfare for people going from north to southern resorts, southern England. So this is a lock-on point for interdimensional contact. When I shared this with one of the professors, he said, Patricia, you're not here for the color therapy class. You have to get into that crop circle, and I'm going to take you. And it was long. It was about a 3.5-hour drive. Okay, cut to the chase. He takes me to the crop circle. I barely can make it into one of these circles. I'm in an altered state already, just moving through the field. And when I finally got into one of the circles, I fell to the ground. I started spinning out. I watched my body disappear. I was looking down at my feet, my legs disappearing, and I turned into sound, and that was it. 2 hours later, he was standing over me, Patricia, yes. Are you okay? Yes. I think I lost consciousness for a few minutes. He said, you've been out for 2.5 hours. And in those 2.5 hours, I was traveling the galaxy. I was with the Sirian High Council. I was traveling through the dimensions. I was walking on the strings of the universe, which now are being depicted by scientists. They're showing how the universe, every single thing that exists in the universe is connected, like we didn't know. But the scientists are getting hep now. And from the first books, the council spoke about the gossamer web of light that connects all things in the universe. I was there. I was walking it. It was the most extraordinary experience of my life. And it was the trigger for my work from then on. First came the Syrian Revelations, 1997, The Cosmos of Soul, my first channeled book, and then Atlantis Rising, and then No More Secrets. They just kept coming. They just kept coming and coming. And I didn't want to be a medium. I was a healer, but I didn't want to be an automatic writer. That wasn't my interest at all, but it just kept coming so fast that at the end of The Cosmos of Soul, when it finished, I was so kind of relieved but sad because it was the culmination of so many months of work. And I remember feeling a sadness that it was coming to a closure. And the next morning I get the title of the next book is Atlantis Rising. I'm like, the next book? Oh, please. So when I say first came the Syrian Revelations, what I'm referring to is a body of work that had me serving as a receptive scribe, utilizing my psychic abilities to receive their flow of consciousness for humankind, for the people that were ready for it. I also received a powerful material from the whales and dolphins, the Kiokwi, as they presented themselves. And recently has come this new phase, which I started to talk about with the plug. I realize now I held it up, but of course you couldn't see it because the PowerPoint was on. So 2 years ago, the council told me that it was time for me to paint. You need to paint. And I've never painted. Because in high school and in college, I was college prep. And in those days, you had a very tight program for college prep. There were no art classes. There were no extra activities or anything outside of the program, was like 3 years of history, 3 years of a foreign language, et cetera, et cetera. So I've never had any art lessons, nothing. And I woke up with that message, you're going to paint. Not unlike when I woke up and started hearing the first channeled information. And I was like, paint, okay, paint. What do you paint? Okay. And I went to the shop and I had no clue whatsoever. Grabbed a few brushes, a canvas or two, and some paint. Came back and started painting feverishly. And lo and behold, with no skill whatsoever, being started to bleed through the paint. Now, let me be clear here. To have never painted or sketched at all, and then suddenly start seeing these beings appear, was quite an extraordinary experience for me, and it still is. Power animals have come through. I'll show you some of those. Angels, you name it, it's coming through. The time traveler was particularly interesting. I think that could be also a depiction of me in a former life. I don't know. I just painted. But what's interesting is I don't sit down and think, okay, today I'm going to paint an angel or a time traveler. I just sit down, I meditate, I see the colors in my mind, I grab the paints, and somewhere between the meditation and the process of just feverishly painting these paintings, I hear a voice that says, stop now, walk away. And every time I do that, when I come back, there's more beings in the paintings. So they're manifesting physicality. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about this little plug here, which still makes me laugh. It's a new phase for me, for us, where of all the information we're receiving now, so many people are channeling, or at least believe they are. This is a new phase. Not to mention the fact that we've got AI creating havoc on so many levels. But this is a new phase because the veil is tattered and blowing in the wind, the multidimensional wind. And so brace yourselves for the kinds of things that are coming through. Hear more. I mean, I just don't know what to say about this. Angelic beings, the three light beings in postcards from the biodome, I believe are the messengers, the Sirian messengers. And it just keeps unfolding this way in the most beautiful way. I'm thrilled that I'm doing this kind of work right now. And I hope you like it. Maya, this one, whew, always remembering no skill, training, nothing. It just walk away. So many times I've stepped away and the painting looked a certain way. And when I come back, it's completely different. And somebody said, maybe it's just because as the paint dries, forms appear. I go, yeah, maybe, or maybe not. And if you look up here, this is recent. Now, all of a sudden, I'm starting to see text in the paintings, writings in the paintings. This is starting to happen now. So I'm hoping that they are going to give me a way to break the code, because if you can see it here, it's subtle. But like this one, this painting, I stepped away, went for coffee, came back, and I could clearly see this writing. Something really incredible is going on. And I think in the light of so many problems that we have on this planet, this is an important place to put our focus. And finally, power animals. I just love it. I just love serving in this way. And I love that the Sirians or whatever other spirits are working through me, that they are using my hands to bring through more physical proof of their existence. Let me just say, the panther is my power animal. I've never painted in my life. I sat down, the eyes started to come through my paintbrush. I mean, how is that possible with no skill or training on how to paint an eye? I got the eyes, and then woof, 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 the rest came through. And the panther, my panther is my power animal, and I had to smile because the panther is so Sirian, also, right? So that's what I've been doing in my spare time. This is very interesting, and this is where I wanted to lead with the discussion of the painting and how that is an evolutionary step for me. And also because our world has become one where we have the focus of a 2-3 second span and we're on to the next thing. That I'm using this vehicle, or they're using this vehicle, to bring through actual physical images for us to consider. Now take a look at this. I call this painting Starman. Somebody said to me, Patricia, oh my God, this is like the face in the crop. And I said, what face? And they said, this one. And I thought, oh my God, look again. This is what I painted coming through the veil. You see this face? It's coming through some multidimensional aspect. And This is the face that came through in Chilbolton, right next to the Chilbolton telescope back in 2001. And they also in that field is where a strip came down that resembled the pattern that was placed in Voyager, the golden disk, the description of our DNA, etc. You may or may not be aware of it, but it was a big deal because the strip that came down that resembled what we sent out showed a different kind of DNA, a different sequence. It was an answer to what we had sent out, and a lot of people were completely very excited. And of course, especially because it was right next to a scientific, almost military site, the Chilbolton Telescope Observatory. Lucy Pringle, who is a master of photography of the crop circles for years, said that nobody understood what this was because when they were looking at it from the grass or from land, it was just looked like a mess. They couldn't discern any pattern or anything. It was just like some kind of weave. They couldn't figure out. It was only when they got up in a plane that they realized this is a face. And then again, this is the same, in my humble opinion. I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say about that. But for me, it is the same exact aspect or energy of you want to see us? We can bleed through for you. We can bleed through the veil. Brace. And so this image of this painting here clearly depicts something coming through a barrier of a veil, a sheath, where this consciousness is manifesting form for us to understand and coming through. Isn't it exciting? Isn't it exciting? It sure is. What lies beyond our field of vision? You know, we are at a most extraordinary time now where we realize that we're moving away from the experience of physicality and moving toward that expanse of being that is the everything, where we exist everywhere. It's so exciting. And now here's something that I want to delve into deeply. So it's what we don't see that matters. We have been conditioned to understand reality by the visible spectrum. And as you see in this depiction, it is a very limited field. I think the visible spectrum has been described as 3% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That is by scientists who are still subject to 3D consciousness and 3D physics. So they depict, as it is depicted here, all these different waves, all these different frequencies, and what they correspond to. But still, it is such a limited portrayal of what really exists. So bear in mind, visible light is the portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that can be detected by the human eye. And that is about 3%. And the rest we can't see. But people like me and many of you see beyond the spectrum. So the question is, are we some gifted? Why are some people gifted? Why do some people have these skills and others not? Sorry. And I believe it's very simple. Our capacity to see expands beyond the visible spectrum, like animals. Dogs Most animals see beyond the visible spectrum too. But we are all, when this thing happens, as this veil drops, and it's disintegrating, which I'll get into, we're seeing more and more. So is it a question of some miraculous aspect of our multidimensional ascension? Or is it that, in other words, that we're going toward a higher dimension, that we're moving away from 3D into a higher frame of existence? Or are we simply becoming capable of experiencing beyond the field of vision? And what then is truly a higher dimension? I hope I'm making sense. I'm getting a little tongue-tied here because it's a scientific aspect, and I'm not a scientist. Bear in mind that all these different forms of energy, radio waves, microwaves, etc., are not physically visible to the human eye. However, that is not to say that we aren't moving toward that, where our perception includes that and beyond it. This is a good place for me to discuss the phone, the bane of my existence. The cell phone is designed. The idea of it is wonderful. It's great for communication and this wonderful tool, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Star Trek, for introducing us to what was coming. It has the frequency of microwave. So every time you hold a phone to your ear, it's like putting your head inside a microwave. Okay? And it heats the tissues of the body. It affects memory and vision. They're now saying it decreases sperm quality and reduces sperm count. And it increases the heat of the testicles. Not that everyone listening has them. But more importantly, I believe the phone is designed to prevent us from being able to rise above this limited perception on the electromagnetic spectrum and to, what's the word I want? Condition us. It's not the word. Lately, I forget words. Let's say entrain. There's the word. To entrain us to a frequency that blocks us from achieving higher consciousness. This phone, people, is a very dangerous tool of the power on this planet. And I implore you to dump the phone. And people say to me, that's impossible. I have to do everything on the phone and whatever. It's like, okay, well then reduce it, because it is frying your brain and it is blocking your ability to accelerate your process of shifting into that invisible frequency that is the access point, if you will, to an expanding reality, an expanding consciousness, an expanding state of being. And so, what is ascension, really? Are we going somewhere? I mean, people are really confused about this. They're having ascension symptoms. What does that mean? Are we going somewhere? Is it another place? Is the higher dimension another place, another location? Do we take our physicality with us? Does an imprint of our being remain? The form, the energy field? We really are confused about this aspect of what we're going through, and yet we're in it. The earth is ascending, the sun is ascending, and we are ascending, despite images of the contrary. And you know, the work of the Syrian High Council, all these books, all these years, has been about the sun ascending out of 3D. And we are now, and as the sun progresses into the fourth dimension, we lose time. So we're experiencing all these things that the Syrian High Council told us about 30 years ago. They're happening. Advice is, first of all, you've got to wean yourself off of the dependency on the phone. And one way to do that is just to remind yourself, okay, wait a minute. If this device is being deliberately created to block me from accessing higher dimensions, I mean, let's just think about this for a minute. Doesn't it make sense that if you want a slave nation, a slave population, one of the great things to do before you hook everybody into AI is to create a device where they're completely hypnotically enslaved, addicted. If I want to eat, food has always been my issue. So if I'm desiring something and I ask myself, do I really need this? Am I addicted to the sugar fix? I don't want to be addicted. I'm not going to have it. And I've lately been able to say, no, put it down, throw it away. It's not good for you. And testing myself all the time. Fortunately, I'm not a person with a lot of addiction problems. I don't take any, read my lips, meds, number one. No meds. And so I deal with emotions when they come up. I heal myself all the time. And I am completely aware of the addictive properties of technology, especially the phone, because this device was created for many reasons that have to do with controlling the population. So you've got the towers. You're pinged, baby. No matter where you are on this planet, you can be located. Radiation that's going into your brain. I mean, little children now are being diagnosed with 400% increase in brain cancer in young children because they're all the phone. So what I recommend is that you use your mind, this beautiful device that you used to have complete control over and now is being manipulated by so many devices, mechanisms. You say no. It isn't easy to say no. But you know what? Never has there been a time more important than now to remember that you are a sovereign being. This is my mantra. And say no. So as far as the phone is concerned, put yourself on a diet. Whether or not you can influence other people is not my point, because everyone is responsible for themselves, except for the children. Keep the phones out of the hands of the children for as long as you can. I've heard that there's a return to landlines lately, which is very good to hear. But for God's sakes, here are some basic things. Get the phone out of the room when you're sleeping. In my case, I hate it. I have it in the car for an emergency in its case, and it cannot be picked up or signals cannot get through this case. So this is not a plug for the company, but I recommend it. Mission Darkness. It's not that expensive. You can get it on Amazon and keep it locked up in this device. It's just it's something like a Faraday cage, but super strong. And it will not, it simply does not function and can't register when it's in it. And Deirdre says mikelock.com is another one. There are several options. The point is, get your mind right to where you are constantly being. I am a godly being. I will not be dragged into this mechanical world. I will not retire my godliness to this system that wants to take that from me. Geraldine says when women are pregnant and they have that phone in their pocket. You know, You know the expression, don't even get me started on that? The phone is a tool designed to make people think it's a tool for the people, but it's not. It's the force. We have names for this force, the evildoers, the deep state, the hierarchy, whatever you want to call that. There is a force determined to take human beings down to a basic denominator and scramble their DNA. So I won't talk about but that was part of the plan. And the phone, stop, girls. The phone is a major step in the takeover of merging humankind with the Borg. Because if we can get you hooked on this, the rest is a walk in the park. So when you see people out at dinner and everybody's glued to the phone, or a concert with 200,000 people and all the phones are up, it's like people are completely checking out from community, reality, communication. Everything is subjected to the technological control system. The next system, let me follow this through and then I'll answer a very important question that's come up. The next system is wearables. Now they're working on that. So the iPhone watch is the first one. And Bill Gates has the patent on wearables. Get the drift? And they're talking about that now, the Internet of Bodies and wearables, which within a couple of years, they want everybody wearing whatever the wearable is so that they can record your health and your heartbeat, and you can get information and all kinds of stuff. And then the next step is the implant. So my warning to everyone is, don't be fooled by the glitz. I have a friend who's got the watch and she goes, oh, isn't it so amazing? I go, no, it's really not. It's frying your entire being and you're being monitored by Borg Central. Is that amazing to you? All right. Oh, that's clever, Thomas. It's making us into phony people. What is Sirius C like? Sirius C is the third star that ascended, and it's stuck in the fourth dimension. Should say stuck, because we're moving into the fourth dimension. And that's why we are having such a rocky time, because as the council said, when you move into the fourth dimension, all the karma ever created in your personal and planetary existence will all be in simultaneous time, all appear, and you will be dealing with in this time. So first of all, I'd like to talk about this, how time is disappearing. There's not a person that I talk to that doesn't recognize and feel and experience the slipping of time. It's ridiculous. And it's like, for me, it's daily. Like I get up in the morning and all of a sudden it's 1 o'clock. And it's not because I'm drifting off in some twilight zone of other consciousness. It's just do the dishes, feed the dogs, boom. Where did 5 hours go? Excuse me? It is, most people are experiencing this and they don't know how to identify it or how to cope with it, because these changes are in some ways very subtle. And because we have no idea what that would be. How possibly can we exist in a state of simultaneous time when throughout our earthly existence, civilizations have tried to identify time with calendars? The Mayan calendar, the Aztec calendar, the Roman calendar, they had every kind of calendar. And it's all false. Some sense of the time-space continuum, which is either it never existed, or it's part of the dissipation of 3D. I always say that it feels like it's something like a treadmill You know, when you go to the gym, not that I can remember, and there's 7 treadmills lined up, and people are going at different speeds, and some are going really fast, and some are not as fast. And that's the interpretation that I have of the time-space continuum. It's not even. It's not steady. It has dips and shifts and glitches. And right now we are in this glitch. It's a quickening. It's a, here comes the question of the timeline theory. Have we glitched? This is where I was going to go next in my presentation, but I think I'd rather just stay here with you. Do you prefer that? Seeing me talk? Enough with the presentation. CERN. One of the things that's happening, okay, so we have the sun ascending into the 4th dimension. And by the way, if you're watching any of the images, the sun, it's got holes in it. Keyholes. This has been depicted in, I think, in my book, No More Secrets. Keyholes. The sun is just going berserk. So it's going berserk as far as what it's sending out. And it's also in its own body, its own containment is dissipating and morphing. And, you know, I'm waiting any minute now to just see the sun go poof. And then we can see all the craft going through it. We've seen images of craft plugged into the sun, that one famous image of a craft with a big tube plugged in as if it was drawing energy out of the sun. It's remarkable. The sun is not what we think it is, right? Nothing is. Now, so we've got the sun going through into the 4th dimension. We are now, at the time of the last book, the New Sirian Revelations, which you've really got to read. The council said we were moving from the 3rd to the 4th. We were feeling the flutter of the 4th. We're in it now. And it still looks like the 3rd, but we're in it. So we've got time completely warping. We have CERN. Neil's got a good question for me. Let me just get to this CERN question and then get back to that question from Neil. CERN. How many of you are aware of CERN? CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, supposedly is sending particles, trying to redefine the subatomic nature of life, of reality, and shooting these particles at the speed of light, or just slower than the speed of light, and smashing atoms and doing all kinds of things unbeknownst to the human race that are altering reality. Now, there's a woman named Astrid Stuckelberg, Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, who is a professor at the University of Switzerland of Sciences. And she has had encounter. She's a heavyweight. I mean, her qualifications are amazing. She's had an encounter with some heavyweights from CERN, and she asked them bold outright, what are you doing there? What other things are you doing besides smashing atoms to see if you can identify the God particle? And she was told that they have opened a portal. And she said they told her, first of all, they told her that they were able to identify 17, the magic number, 17 dimensions, which I thought was very interesting. I don't think we're limited as far as dimension goes. We've got astrophysicist Michio Kaku says there are 11. Other spiritual people say there are 7. I think it's ludicrous to try to put a number on how many dimensions there are. I think there's an infinite, endless array, just like the visual spectrum that I showed you, and then all this array of energy waves. And we're trying to define the Arcturians are on the 7th and the Sirians are on the 6th. It's like, there's an infinite array of dimensional levels of density, of consciousness, of light, until we go back and merge with source completely. So back to CERN. They're messing around with this, shooting these atoms and whatever, and they're opening portals. And she claimed, and this is not A journalist. This is a woman, a scientist with heavy pedigree in science. She claims that she was told that they opened this portal twice, which means much more than that, and that outside of the area where this portal is inside CERN sits a table of scientists, like a conference room. She was told that she was told that they opened this portal twice, and twice a being walked through. And the second time it sat down at the table, and on its way out, it picked up somebody's scarf and went back out. And they also told her, we are trying to bring something through, and we are trying to send something through. This is science, guys. This is what they're playing with. Now, there is also the occasion where they fired up, quite recently, they fired up the Super Hadron Collider AI computer at CERN. And it, in a matter of nanoseconds, it altered the magnetosphere of our planet. And they got scared and they shut it down. This is all theoretically because this is hearsay, okay? I don't like anybody messing with my magnetosphere. Thank you very much. These people are playing with fire, and I think that they are upsetting the balance of the planet. They're upsetting the volcanic under earth, the whole thing. A lot of it is happening because of CERN. And so my question is, what is it that they're trying to bring through? Who do they work for? Because if you'll remember, oh my gosh, I've got to remember to talk about the Mandela effect. If you remember, years ago, I don't remember, it was 2018, they did that satanic, bizarre, let's call it pagan, satanic dance number where there's a big show. Who are the people doing CERN? Apparently there are 10,000 scientists from 23 different countries working at CERN, but you'd have to double check that. So this show, horned animals, creepy stuff. And it was for the opening of CERN. And I was watching it going, this is satanic. How is this allowed? Why is this happening? And then recently, when I went to look it up, it had nothing to do with CERN. It was only about the tunnel, whose name I can't remember. It was the ceremony for the opening of some tunnel. I was like, this is the Mandela effect. Don't tell me this wasn't the ceremony for CERN. Many of us remember it as being the opening of CERN, the Goddard Tunnel, it's called. No, that doesn't exist anymore. So this brings me to the Mandela effect. Are they capable, the powers that be, the maniacs that be, or even an alien synthetic race that's taking over the planet? Are they rewriting the past in this time of timelessness, this period of timelessness? Are they able to alter the past? This is the Mandela effect. There is no way that ceremony was not identified as being for the opening of CERN. And yet now there's every kind of comment. Oh, had nothing to do with CERN. People are hoaxing that it was the CERN. No, it was for the tunnel. No, it was for CERN, right? Then you have all these other things that are happening, like logos that are changed. I believe they're changing history with AI. And am I getting off topic here? Maybe, but it's important to talk about this. How many of you are familiar with the Mandela effect? Let's see some comments. Michelle says, or are we shifting timelines that don't have the same history? Yes, because I believe that we're glitched. part of the experience we're having right now is that we're moving into 4D. And I'm always curious why people think we're leaping into 5D. We've got to go through 4D on our way. It's a clearing station. So if they're opening portals and doing things like altering the magnetosphere of the Earth, have we been catapulted into another timeline by CERN? Because if you look at what's going on this planet in the last, well, huge shift once they introduced the internet. And the first time I heard about the internet, I got really dark. This guy was giving me a presentation of what it would be like. I said, this is a bad thing. He said, how can you say that? It's going to open communication all around the world. This is not a good thing. No, I don't want this. But it's the last few years we're being jettisoned to another state of being. And I feel that CERN, which turned back on in 23, has everything to do with that shift. My question is, and this is a question I want to ask all of you, how do we hold our ground as sovereign beings, not to allow ourselves to be catapulted into a level of consciousness that we do not want? I tell you that I'm one of the only people that's ever talked about 4D. It was like, how did it happen that everybody's enamored of 5D and 4D went by the by? And the council have said, this is the clearing station. It's like Dante's Inferno and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. They all have an experience where the soul has to go through a traumatic gateway before it gets to the higher levels. And 4D is that. And how does that possibly get overlooked? So the council say 4D is where you experience timelessness. And you're going to be confused and out of step in many ways because it's going to keep accelerating more and more and more until poof. And I go, what happens with poof? How can I explain to people the poof part? Because we can consider, and it's palpable to be losing time, to feel time racing. But then what happens when it's all simultaneous? And they couldn't explain it to me. They said, you're not in a position, words will not explain that simultaneous reality to you because you're still stuck with your feet in 3D and your mind moving into 4D. Okay, so as far as the people that are all waxing effusive about 5D, bless them. But I don't buy it. That might make me some enemies. But when people tell me they're 5D beings, I go, what does that mean? And they say, what do you mean? What does it mean? I said, what does it mean to be a 5D being? Why are we having a conversation? Why are you using language if you're in a 5-dimensional energy band? Aren't you past having to communicate with words? I don't understand it. It's like 5D is a gimmick for us. You guys are wonderful. Oh, hi, Geraldine. Thank you for tuning in. I might make some enemies by saying this, but we have to be ever so careful with the human ego. It's very easy to get caught up in the galactic thing, the Federation. It's almost like a costume party in some ways. And people are running away with channeling and a lot of aspects that I feel deter them from being grounded, present, and effective in this shift, because it's an extraordinary thing to be going through. But as far as 5D, there's a lot of ego attached to that. If 4D is good, 5D is better. But I think that it just doesn't resonate for me. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a 5-dimensional being, you wouldn't be having a conversation in this world. The sun is a conscious deity. I think all planetary beings are conscious deities, and that the sun is transmuting its physicality from a state of density to a state of lighter, non-dense consciousness. So is it a stargate? What is a stargate? Let's talk about that. This is another word we like a lot, stargate and portal. But if everything is shifting and the veil is coming down, will there be stargates or will everything be open? Because I think we're moving to that. Right now, it's almost as if there's a screen and there'll be pinholes in the screen where you can get a glimpse of another dimensional reality. But it feels that our process of ascension is that this all dissipates, just falls away. And what we have is a completely open field of consciousness. To me, that's what ascension is. And so as far as the sun, you keep an eye on the sun. You know, years ago, I designed a tarot deck, and years ago I used to teach the tarot, and I used to show people that the sun card in the classic tarot deck shows a white sun, and I used to tell people, pay attention to this because the sun is in fact white. It's not yellow anymore. It's ascending, and it was way back then. This is being depicted as something important. So people have noticed that the sun is losing its yellow color. It's whiter and whiter. Part of that probably because of the chemtrails, but nonetheless, I feel that it's losing its physical essence, moving into a 4D density. And is it a portal? I think probably all stars are portals, openings. Imagine a screen and you've got pinholes in the screen where light comes through, and that the nature or the essence of that light being able to poke through is something like a portal. And yes, we see a craft coming in and out of the sun. I mean, we've seen images. That one, I'm sure you guys have seen this image of this craft with the tube stuck into the outer edge of the sun. And reports also that Sirius is a portal. So I'm going to suggest that stars are passageways from one aspect to another, one dimension, maybe one universe, parallel universe. Everything is possible in the cosmos of soul. That's one thing we're learning. We're privileged to be learning at this point in our evolutionary journey. Yeah, Neil says he saw it on NASA's website. They removed it. Yeah, it was so obvious. It was big compared to the sun is this big, and this sphere was this big with a tube. It was like a gassing up. I'm sorry. Gucci. My dogs are getting rambunctious. I'm so sorry. What about the powers that are now going out of their way to block the sun? Yeah, I'm not happy with that either. Bill Gates, I discussed this in the new Sirian Revelations. He now started this new program, and he's got his pals in England supporting him, where he's got a balloon going on. It's not enough. The chemtrails aren't enough. They want to completely block the sun. So they're sending up a balloon and dispersing calcium particles that will dramatically block the sun, lizards. And I wonder what it's going to take for the human race to stop these beings. And here's a question I throw out to the people. Are we meant to, or are we meant to just understand that this is a process of our passing? It doesn't look like enough people are going to rebel against the Bill Gateses of the world to stop people like him. So then my question is, what do we need to learn from this sun being blocked? What do we need to create from the darkness that they want to impose upon us? How do we undo that? And do we have to? It's spiritually philosophical, irresolved concepts. And all I can say is to pursue as much as possible your understanding of your immortality. Take responsibility for the fact that whatever negativity you experience on this planet, you came for. There's a lesson here for you. It's school. And the council say it's the university of the physical reality. What did we come here to learn? Why did some of us, I think I'm a bodhisattva. I think I sacrificed my journey up the spiral to come in here and help. Why? And we may never have answers for that. But inevitably, Neil and everyone that's listening, the ultimate experience here is to create beauty in this world, in your soul, to acknowledge it, because to not acknowledge it and just be love and light, that's not how I roll. Acknowledge it because we have responsibility to somehow affect change. But in the end, the ultimate responsibility we have is to be our best, to experience life at the highest vibration we can, and to go to our next destination with a library of experience of what it all meant, what we take away, what we move forward. I got goosebumps.